Take the ISI mark on your electric kettle, ag mark on your honey, wool mark on your sweater, or hallmark on your gold. These don't identify a specific manufacturer. Instead, they indicate that a product meets a defined standard. Crucially, the bodies owning these marks are legally prohibited from trading in the goods they certify. Understanding the difference requires looking at the three-way statutory split. An ordinary trademark distinguishes the goods of one person. A collective mark, defined under Section 2, Subsection 1, Clause G, distinguishes the goods or services of members of an association from those of non-members. This association cannot be a partnership under the Indian Partnership Act 1932. A certification mark, defined under Clause E, operates differently. The defining statutory requirement is independence. Under Section 71, Subsection 3, the proprietor must not carry on a trade in the goods it certifies. While a collective association may trade on behalf of its members, the certifier must have no commercial interest in the certified product. This distinction is a recurring focus of the agent examination. In 2015 and 2018, the paper specifically required candidates to identify whether a certification mark owner is permitted to trade in their own certified goods. Section 71, Subsection 3 makes the prohibition clear. While a collective mark secures the commercial interests of its members, a certification mark serves as a verification of standards for the public. Chapter 8 builds the architecture for collective marks, starting with Sections 61 and 62. Under Section 62, a collective mark faces an additional ground for refusal. It will be rejected if it is likely to be mistaken for an ordinary trademark. The registration must clearly signal that it represents an association, not an individual source. Because multiple people use a collective mark, Section 63 requires the application to include mandatory regulations. You can track these requirements using the acronym MACS: the members authorized to use the mark, the admission conditions for joining, the conditions of use, and the sanctions for misuse. Sections 64 through 66 govern the management of these rules. Regulations are open to public inspection under Section 65. Because they are public records, any internal changes made by an association are legally void under Section 66 until they are filed with and accepted by the registrar. Infringement cases also work differently here. Section 67 dictates that in a lawsuit, the court must account for the loss suffered by the authorized members, not just the association as a legal entity. The proprietor then holds the recovered damages for those members. Finally, Section 68 introduces two removal grounds unique to this category. A collective mark can be canceled if it begins to mislead the public about its nature, or if the proprietor fails to observe and enforce its own regulations. Effectively, the association is legally responsible for policing its members. If that control mechanism fails, the registration itself is at risk. Certification marks are governed by Chapter 9. Looking at the comparison in our notes, we see the absolute bar in Section 71, Subsection 3. If a certifier begins manufacturing or selling the same kind of goods they certify, they violate the core independence rule and lose their eligibility to hold the mark. Section 72 is the most distinct procedural step. The registrar forwards every application to the central government to verify two factors: the applicant's competence to certify and if registration serves the public interest. Once approved, the application enters the Section 73 opposition phase. During this 4-month window, on Form TMO, opponents have the right to challenge the technical competence of the certifying body. No other category of trademark involves the central government directly during registration. The Ministry of Commerce acts as the primary authority, ensuring these marks remain reliable for consumers. Under Section 74, certification regulations must specify exactly how the system functions. You can remember these as CTAC-FD, the characteristics certified, the testing methods, the authorization criteria, the conditions of use, the fees, and the process for resolving disputes. Sections 75 and 76 cover infringement and its exceptions, while Section 77 grants the registrar the power to cancel a mark if the certifier enters the trade. Note also that under Section 43, a certification mark cannot be assigned to a new owner without the registrar's consent. The official fees follow a predictable pattern. A standard company application costs 10,000 rupees. E-filing provides a 10% discount, bringing it down to 9,000. For individuals or startups, the rate is exactly half of the company fee, or 4,500 rupees for e-filing. Recognizing these marks is essential for the examination. The ISI mark covers industrial products, Ag mark handles agricultural quality, Hallmark verifies gold purity, and Woolmark certifies textile content. Darjeeling tea is a notable example of overlapping protection. It is certified for quality under the Trademarks Act and separately protected for its geographical origin under the GI Act. Certification marks and geographical indications are separate legal tools. A certification mark verifies standards, such as purity, and can be used by anyone meeting those rules, regardless of location. A GI, however, is strictly tied to geographical origin. Quality must be attributable to that specific place. Ownership also differs. A certification mark belongs to a single certifying body. A GI belongs to a regional community of producers. Because a GI is a community right, Section 24 of the GI Act prohibits it from ever being assigned to an individual owner. A certification mark allows a single entity to control a technical standard, while a GI mandates community-based management of a regional brand. To finalize our understanding of these statutory boundaries, let's review the core requirements. First, who owns a collective mark? An association of persons, excluding any partnerships. Question 2. What is the mandatory filing for a collective mark application? Regulations, as required by Section 63. Question 3. Can the proprietor of a certification mark trade in the goods they certify? No, per Section 71, subsection 3. Question 4. Who must approve certification mark regulations in addition to the registrar? The Central Government, under Section 72. Question 5. What specific removal ground applies only to collective marks? The failure to enforce regulations, defined in Section 68. Question 6. What is necessary for the assignment of a certification mark? Consent from the registrar, under Section 43. Question 7. What category do ISI, Ag mark, and Hallmark fall into? Certification trademarks. Question 8. How is Darjeeling tea protected? Both as a certification mark and a geographical indication. That concludes Lecture T6. In T7, we will cover appeals to the High Court and the penalty structures under the John Vishwas Act. Subscribe for the full course. This is Patentworld.ai.